It's about time we had a Q&A. Okay, it's time to answer some questions. The first question comes from Bubble2004. Just wondering where you got your colour card from. That question is in relation to this, which is the Colour Checker Classic from X-Rite, which travels with me everywhere I go. I mentioned this on a previous video on a bag review, camera bag review, and I've also mentioned it on a few blog posts. And it comes with the Colour Monkey, the X-Rite Colour Monkey colour correction system, which I use to set my monitors, and I also use to calibrate my printers for photo prints. I think you can buy a standalone colour card, but it's good to use it in combination with the whole colour correction system. And there'll probably be a video about that in the future when I talk about setting up photography printers for print. Ryosode2 asks, interested in your Nakasendo Way pictures. I grew up in the area, Suwa, Shiojiri, Matsumoto, but in my adulthood haven't had a chance to visit the Kiso area. Please do share if and when you can. Well, I posted a few pictures from my Nakasendo Way trip on my blog, so I'll add a link to that somewhere around here or in the notes for this Q&A. And I'm planning to spend quite a bit more time in that area in autumn, so I'll hopefully have a lot more photos to share then. Aidan Ruffle asks, is there a way to rename the folders under manufacturer and also rearrange those folders? I can't seem to do it. Thanks. That's a question about Logic Pro. I did a video a few weeks ago about customizing Logic Pro plugins. And unfortunately, Aidan, I don't think that you can reorganize them. You can do a lot of customization under the category section, and it looks like the manufacturer folders should be customizable and you should be able to move them around, but I can't seem to be able to do it either. Steve Seguin asks, it does seem like it indeed needs a pop filter if I use it close up, which defeats the purpose of the style. Overall, it sounds pretty good, but I'm wondering if an SM7B is ultimately still a better choice for practical use. That's in response to my Shure 5575 LE review of a very cool looking retro microphone. And I do kind of think that if you were being purely practical, the SM7B is probably, or the SM7, whichever version you like, is probably a better choice, certainly for voiceover work and vocal work. But there is something cool about the 5575 vibe. And for setting up a kind of live setup, I think it's nice. I want to be able to do some live videos in the future, and I think I will use that mic. But you're right, for all practical purposes, the SM7 and variations thereof is a better choice. Shivers asks, what are the best way for artists to gain exposure in Tokyo? What are the best art communities, in your opinion, in Tokyo? And that's a great question. I feel spectacularly unqualified to answer it, partly because I've only been in Tokyo for 2 years and partly because my Japanese isn't that good. So I'm really limited in terms of community in a deep way to what I can get away with in English and maybe a little bit of Japanese. So in terms of how to get exposure is a really difficult question to answer. And I'm going to come at this sideways a little bit. What I'm going to explain is why I haven't had an exhibition in Tokyo yet. Because in a way, for my photographic work, I'm ready to have another exhibition. I'm already planning a future exhibition in another city for 2017, but I don't feel I'm there yet for Tokyo. And the reason for that is because I don't feel like I have the kind of community around my work that would make an exhibition successful. And this is a really important point, because this really isn't about how many friends do you have or what is your social life like. It's about the kind of buzz, immediate close buzz that you've created for your work. And I think it's very easy to, in our kind of social media age, to get all sort of numbers and metrics oriented and think big. But I actually think in terms of creating some kind of exposure or interest for your work, it's really good to start small, but enthusiastic. Let me give you a little story. When I was in New York in October, I got the opportunity to spend some time with some artists in Brooklyn, and they were talking about a little exhibition that was going to come up in a couple of weeks. And the exhibition, the idea of it was scenes of Joaquin Phoenix walking in various films, and the exhibition was going to be called Walking Phoenix. Now, when I heard that, I kind of couldn't figure out whether that was for real or they were kind of like, just having a bit of a joke. But it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of serious, and everybody kind of would hear about this and go, oh, that sounds cool, I want to go. That's what buzz is like in a little community. Here's an idea. Let's get a few people around it, and let's sit in expectation that the great man Joaquin will walk by, Phoenix-like. I think, for example, right now, I could print a bunch of photos and I could hang them up in my living room, for example. I could hang them up here in the studio, but would I get people to turn up who were really interested in the work rather than just free food and free drink? I'm not sure yet. And that's a very small kind of, it's one-to-one sort of personal work. So I think I'd kind of subvert the question by saying, rather than how do you get exposure in some kind of big meteoric way, is the question is probably more about how do you get a small little community around your work who are interested in your creative output rather than just you as maybe a cool person to hang around with or to socialize with. Which throws us to the other question, what are the best communities in your opinion for Tokyo, the best art communities? I'm really excited by Canvas, and I think what's interesting about Canvas to me is that it's broad, potentially collaborative. It's pulling in creatives from a whole bunch of different fields in Tokyo, and more important than anything, it's new. There's probably a bunch of other kind of controversial things I think I could say about my perspective on the creative scene in Tokyo, at least as far as foreign and English language creatives here. There's a lot of things that feel settled and kind of a pontificate that exists to put everybody in their place. And that's just a little bit boring. I think what I like about Canvas is that it's relatively new, it's relatively fresh. They're trying to do some real life stuff, but they're also trying to get the networking and the networking based on putting your work out there first and then trying to connect in the real world. So Canvas is the one I'm excited about. That's the one I'm kind of, I'm putting my money on figuratively and literally to create a bit of community for us amongst the English language and foreign language speaking here in Tokyo. Brian asks, how did you start? I don't know if that's a question about this video. I started this video nervously, like I do all my videos. It's probably about how did I start creatively or how did I start musically? Well, I was given a guitar when I was 5 and I just kept playing. That's kind of the simple answer. I'll tell you a story that's probably more of an interesting answer. I went to a really terrible high school that hardly had any sort of arts program at all. But I was fortunate that in year 11, we got to hold a musical. We did Pirates of Penzance. And I wasn't one of the on-stage people, but I volunteered for the technical crew. I ran the sound and I ran the lighting. And it was an odd production because very few guys volunteered for any parts. So the cast was almost all like girls, right? Including, most of the pirates were played by girls, which created a funny dynamic. But we had there was a pretty casual kind of atmosphere to the rehearsals. And as we got closer to the dress rehearsals, myself and another friend, John, he was a Greek kid, but he was massively into UK post-punk, Paul Weller and the Jam and that sort of stuff. We started bringing our electric guitars to the rehearsals, plugging them into the PA and just playing a few pop songs. And the whole cast would come out sort of as before the dress rehearsals, and we'd all sit on the front of the stage and the two of us would play guitar, and everyone would join in and sing along. And it wasn't a performance, but it was kind of good because like everybody could sing. And it just set a nice mood, kind of got us all sort of focused and calm before the performances. And I realized something, because up until that point, for me, music had been like a way to sort of impress people, or it had been like a sort of a bit of a personal thing. But I realized, sort of sitting there as I think I was 15 or 16 at the time, on stage with like, 30, 40 people around me, just making music because we were all a little bit nervous and scared. And this was something that we shared. I realized that music was something kind of beautiful and powerful and that could move us. And I just wanted to keep doing that. And so at every stage in my life, sometimes I've had to pay the bills. Sometimes I've done things that I thought were kind of fight the good fight, as it were. But I always came back to doing something artistic, something creative, because, life is not easy, and we need art and beauty and music and, things that are aesthetically pleasing to balm our souls and to help us get through. So, that's how I started. Anyway, I hope this kind of Q&A is helpful. I'd like to answer more questions, and I'd like to probably answer them on video rather than just writing big long answers. So if you have any more questions, leave a comment below, comment on the other videos that I make, and I'll do another Q&A soon. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Please let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and thanks for tuning in.